typically what we would do if we were in person is we would, role play, right? We would talk about these and actually pick someone and role play. So what I want to do, just the first part of the section that covers the class materials, but then just kind of talk about the scripts. I don't necessarily want to read them to you per se, because that's kind of annoying. I hate when instructors do that, right? When they read the slides and just read at you, like, you can read, you're intelligent, right? So more or less, I kind of like just have a little discussion around the particular scripts. And we talked about this in the mastermind last week at BAM. Nate brought it up about, are we practicing our scripts and dialogues? And, I've said it before, there's no companies out there taking your credit card numbers and, teaching you how to role play, right? They're taking your credit cards to generate leads, but they're not doing it to help you role play. And, some of you might've heard me tell this story before, but years ago when I decided I wanted to be a speaker, I decided I would join Toastmasters because Toastmasters helps people prepare to be a speaker. And one of my favorite parts about Toastmasters wasn't necessarily about giving the speeches. It was the impromptu speaking. So you had the Toastmaster of the week and you had a word of the day. And so the Toastmaster would get up and they would set it up, have a topic, talk for a couple minutes, and then they would throw out a question. And you didn't know who they were going to pick on. So you'd be on your edge of your seat, because if it was, you had to be paying attention, right? Because if it was you had to be able to either one, answer the question, or two, you could go off on some tangent. The only thing was it was a minimum of 2 minutes, or I think max 2 minutes. So between 1 and 2 minutes, and you had to use the word of the day. And so I loved impromptu speaking because it helped me to be quick on my game. And then I started thinking about scripts and dialogues and was like, well, this really helps with scripts and dialogues. Because if you think about it, Monica, if someone throws you an objection or something in the middle of a conversation and we're not prepared, we could stumble, right? We can come across as deer in the headlights. And so impromptu speaking through Toastmasters actually helped me a lot, just being a better salesperson, because I was able to deal with, learn those scripts and dialogues and have them be a little bit quicker on the draw. Right. And so I shared with you guys last week that I got tripped up by somebody who, it's a listing I've been working on. And he went to either Open Door or OfferPad and got an offer. And it threw me off my game because I wasn't even thinking about this guy going that route. And of course, the offer's ridiculous. It's nowhere near what the house is worth. And of course, he hasn't submitted any pictures or anything like that. So I've been challenged with that. And so it's a reminder that we need to make sure that we're exposing and looking at all those things. It doesn't take very long to hop on Redfin and see what Redfin says, or Zillow, or even, soliciting those offers from those companies. If that's something that, you think that, because OfferPad and Open Door will pay you a commission, a finder's fee, right? And you can still represent your seller through that transaction. So kind of not a pride moment for myself. So I'm being transparent with you guys, and a little bit embarrassing that took me off my game. I was completely threw me aside that he had gone and done that. So getting into scripts and dialogues, when we practice them, right? You guys have heard me say this, that Bruce Lee did not fear a man who knew 10,000 kicks. He feared the man who had practiced one kick 10,000 times. And so when we think about our scripts and dialogues, practice them, rehearse them, use them with your accountability partners. Okay. So that being said, you guys should have the class materials. Let me do a share screen and we'll pop into the materials here. Okay. Go away. So we talk about in momentum, we use the word typical, right? We talk about typical agents, and typical, I guess maybe a better word might be average, right? And so we want to move away from that type of behavior. And there's a lot of, what they say, almost 92,000 agents. They said a week ago in the class from the commissioner. So there's a lot of agents in the state, right? There's a lot of people running around saying that they practice real estate. And if you've ever bought or sold anything, you've had a bad experience with a salesperson, right? So we want to move away from that typical behavior into extraordinary, right? Into exceptional. And so when we think about that, this class, what we want to do is we want to think about increasing our listing inventory. I haven't checked it today. Has anybody checked how many active homes are on the market today? I saw the graphic that Nate pushed out about the market update. I think Monica, you shared it. Pretty interesting numbers, right? And I've had to talk all my coaching clients off the ledge. This is just recently with the interest rates, and rates went up yesterday. Did you guys see that?
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. So Yeah. So those are all things that, I've got people. In fact, I engaged in a Facebook post, which I rarely do. And then I kicked myself in the butt, sensationalized post about the market and doom and gloom. And, I was, doing what I do as a coach, right. And commenting on there that, hey, this is nowhere near what we went through. If you were here when the crash happened, this is nowhere near that, right? And everyone needs to slow their roll. We tend to swing the pendulum. 60 days ago, we were all over here swinging the pendulum. Oh my God, the market's hot. There's no inventory. Everything's selling, faster than we can list it. And now 30 days later, here we are way over here on the other side of the pendulum. The sky is falling because interest rates went up, right? And so where's the middle ground in that? And so I think we really have to be careful with our messaging as an industry, because we swing that pendulum. Right? We're the ones that educate the population. And so being really mindful about our messaging right now. 6.25. Yeah, I just bought a house, you guys. It closed at 3.75. I've only been here like 60 days. So it's a huge increase. I get it, right? But we still can message around that. What are the positives, right? What are our options? And so, if this is our new normal, this is our new playing field, how do we navigate it? How do we still be champions for positive of real estate, right? It's at the end of the day, people still need to buy and sell real estate. So my little rants, we'll get back to the materials. I just, having these coaching calls with people where literally agents are like, oh my God, like this is the end of the world. And it really isn't. So going to question number one, how do we increase our inventory? So I asked that question, how many active homes are on the market? Because we're seeing an uptick. And personally, I think it's a good thing, right? So number two is we want to master an effective proven dialogue. So we've got all kinds of scripts in here. And then how do you differentiate yourself from the typical agent? What are you doing different that makes you stand out and makes you unique? We want to study and practice to maximize your production. So we talk about SPAR, right? So constantly looking at this. So I would challenge you guys to record yourself reading the scripts and then just listen to it when you're driving around, right? So that that stuff starts to soak in. I committed last week in the mastermind to greatest salesman in the world, and listening to scroll one. Sandra, I think that's you. I'm going to mute you. Listening to scroll number one, it's funny because I've listened to it, I don't know, maybe 100 times now after studying this book as many times as I have. And so I can actually recite what he's saying before he gets to it. Right. And that's mastery, right? But I still hear things, even though I've studied it. I did 2 masterminds a couple years ago. I've listened to it before. So I've listened to this book quite a bit, right? But that's mastering it, is over and over and over and over until it becomes part of our DNA. Okay. So the truth on page 3 of the materials is that typical agents work to overcome objections. Successful consultants work on preventing the objection. So think about that. If I can prevent it, Jan, from ever even being something that the seller utters out of their mouth, right? That's so much easier and makes me so much more professional than me trying to play Frogger and overcome all these different objections that I could have prevented if I just would have had a different type of messaging and a different type of dialogue. Okay. So the question here is, what's the best way to prevent an objection? What do you guys think? No comments?
Be prepared.
Be prepared.
Have a script that you've practiced and address it in your presentation straight away.
Absolutely. Yep. Be prepared. I think that was, one thing about public speaking that they tell you, the best way to overcome nerves is to be prepared, to know your stuff. And I'll tell you, when I know that that's true, when I'm winging it, that's when I'm like, oh, get the shaky hands and, feel a little bit dizzy. So yeah, more prepared that you are. And I think the upfront conversation too, right? Well, before we even go to the house, gathering as much information as you possibly can. And I love the question is just, tell me about the last time you bought or sold a house, right? Because if let's say that they had a short sale or a foreclosure, totally different experience, right? Or let's say that they sold in the last 5 years and it sold really quickly, right? So now we're managing where that expectation is, right? What they expect of us. I had a lady one time I was working with that wanted a big backyard. And I was racking my brain trying to find acreage for this lady, because in my mind, that's what a big backyard is acreage. Well, I couldn't find it. And I kept showing this woman houses and I just was not finding what she wanted. And finally I asked myself, tell me about the house you live in now. And she had like a patio home that had a really tiny yard, almost no yard. So a big backyard to her was a 7,500 square foot average typical backyard, right? And so I had been racking my brains thinking, how am I going to find this woman acreage? Because that's my perception of what a big backyard is. When in fact, all she wanted was a standard lot. And we went to Sun City Grand, found her a house, happy clam. Yeah, Sun City Grand, happy clam, got her big backyard, right? And so asking those questions, I think that's part of how we overcome objections, is being prepared on the upfront. Okay. Let's see. All right, I think that's everything I want to cover on that page. So people will follow, trust and follow what you can logically and tangibly explain. This is one of our core values in Momentum. So to prevent the listing objections, we must allow them to discover why you're different, right? Be a leader, be a champion. You know, with all the sensationalizing on social media, and maybe I just need to take a break from social media. we got this platform, right, that allows us to have a voice, and sometimes that voice isn't good. And so being careful about are we being a champion of homeownership? Right? Are we being innovative? Are we being a leader? We want to move beyond an opinion and give tangible facts. Comps and data and what has sold in the past is tangible, right? That is a fact that we can deliver to someone and say, here's what has happened before, right? Here's what the market has said. And I think the days of overpricing stuff is gone. Right. I think that we need to manage sellers' expectations right now. Things are shifting. And so I don't think we can just price a house where we want to and expect it's going to get multiple offers. So I think that we have to manage people's expectations. So studying the market, studying the data, being a strategist, right? So we have a class coming up on pricing, right? And I think it's very timely with where we are today. So being a strategist, be logical. When it's emotional selling a home, right? It's emotional buying a home. So we want to be the sound logic in that conversation. We want to track our results. We talk a lot about tracking and momentum, you guys, because that's how we're accountable. What gets measured gets done. So we want to improve our results, right? So we've got to be intentional. How do I take my skill and up my game? And the way we do that is we practice, right? We have accountability partners. We look to challenge ourselves and our behavior and make changes. And then we want to cause our results. So that's being proactive. And the word proactive means to produce action, right? To produce an activity. So the reminders that sellers hire and refer realtors who possess proven systems that guarantee results. And so I think right now we have an opportunity. I personally think it's kind of exciting to think about a house sitting on the market for 30 days. You might think I'm crazy, but think about it. Well, if statistically speaking, one listing should result in 1.5 buy sides, we've been missing out on that market because the houses are moving so quickly that some agents aren't even marketing, right? They're not even putting a sign up. They're just not putting up a sign, and it is what it is. And so no professional photography. So I think we have an opportunity to get back to the root of what we do as realtors to represent sellers. And that defends our commission. It defends our value in the marketplace, right? So I look at it as an exciting time. So, all right. So sellers work with those that they know, like, and trust. So being professionally attractive. And so what does that look like? So have you ever met someone who's professionally unattractive? Yeah, I would say all of us probably have engaged with someone like that, right? So we want to demonstrate that you possess knowledge, skill, and disposition needed to get the job done. So most realtors mistakenly ignore creating or improving their disposition, which is a necessary component of eliminating objections, right? Rose Gillen said something to me the other day. And I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but this warrants repeating. I've been asking her since I met her, what makes you different? Because if you ever hung out with Rose, there's something different about Rose. And Rose is killing it. Like, she's probably one of the most busy agents in our company. And finally, I've been asking her for 5 years, what is it? What is it that's different about you? Tell me what's your secret sauce? And she can't answer me. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about, Sarah. I just do what I do. I'm me, right? And finally, the other day, she said, you have to treat people like you've known them their whole life. And I stopped. I said, there you go. That's the answer I've been looking for 5 years. That is it. That's your secret sauce. And so if you think about that, if you've ever interacted with Rose, you feel like that. You feel like you've known Rose your entire life. She is your best friend, and she just walks up. She's in your space. She's charming. She's charismatic. She's likable, all of that, right? And that is what makes her good at what she does, is she treats everyone like she has known them their entire life. And so that to me is very professionally attractive. So Not probably something easy for all of us to do, but it's the secret sauce, right? So dispositions, we want to have confidence. Confidence, not arrogance, but not timid, right? We want to be likable versus being incompatible. We want to be approachable, right? Not withdrawn or shy. Open to suggestions. One of my favorite scripts, you guys, is just the word "oh," because I can say the word "oh" in all kinds of different ways and solicit all kinds of different emotions from you. It can be scary, it can be exciting, it could be interested, right? And so using the word "oh," tell me more about that, Jan, right? We got someone popping in. So open to suggestions versus being closed to suggestions. I think it's a kiss of death if you walk into a listing appointment and think that you know everything. Right? Because we don't have a crystal ball, right? And so comps are kind of like a crystal ball, but at the end of the day, we really don't have a crystal ball. We want to be organized versus being unorganized, structured versus being chaotic, or like I said, unorganized. We want to be aware, right? Be aware of what's happening, be a good listener instead of being oblivious or in our own space. Be genuine. I think that's super important too. That goes back to with Rose of acting like you've known someone their entire life versus being phony. We've all dealt with someone who's phony and you know that they're phony. And it doesn't feel very good, right? We want to get away from them because it's ew, it's icky, right? Being intentional versus being spontaneous or sporadic. Being proactive versus being reactive. You know, we have these little things right here that make us very, oh, you can't see my cell phone, but that looked weird. We have cell phones that make us very reactive, right? Because what is the first thing we do? Most of us use our phones for our alarm in the morning, right? So it's very easy to just grab your phone and all of a sudden your day is being dictated by what's in your inbox from overnight, right? Or what messages came through. So that's not being proactive, that's being reactive, right? And the spoiler alert, they do sell alarm clocks at Target. So you could actually just go buy an alarm clock and not use your cell phone if you wanted. So you want to be logical versus being unreasonable. We want to be focused versus being scattered. We want to be unique, right? We want to be you, every single one of you brings something unique to the table that is you. Right? Monica, no one else can duplicate that, right? Sandra, same thing with you. No one can duplicate that. Each of you brings something unique. And all of you come from a past life, right? Of some other career that lends you skill that you can apply in real estate, right? So own those uniqueness, those unique things about you, because they're your beacon, right? That's what brings your people to you. We want to be honest, of course, right? That's one of our code of ethics versus being misleading. We want to be passionate, right? We want to love what we do. So, I was on a call last night and I was venting about something and she was like, "You're very passionate about this, aren't you?" And so, I've been doing this 25 years. Obviously, I'm very passionate about real estate, right? And versus being indifferent. And I think passionate also lends to helping people. One of my friends, she has a property in Youngtown, and her dad is trying to sell it out from underneath her. And she's naive, right? She doesn't know a lot about real estate, doesn't know a lot about law and things like that. And he's trying to strong arm her into signing a power of attorney. And I was very passionate with her on the phone and defending her. And I was actually kind of pissed off, if I'm being honest. And I was trying to talk to her dad and explain to him what he was doing, he couldn't do. And he hung up on me because he didn't want to hear from me. But I was very passionate about that because she's getting hosed, right? He's trying to do something that he can't do. And she doesn't realize what's happening. And so that also is being passionate about taking care of people, right? And making sure that they have good representation and they know what's going on. So the truth on page 5 is that objections disappear in the direct proportion to a seller's confidence in you and your abilities. And so if you're new, you got to fake it till you make it, right? And so I love when people say, "Well, how long have you been doing this?" Feels like forever. Right? Jan, does it feel like forever when you're in the trenches right now? Yeah, absolutely. Right. So that's a great way to overcome that question, and everyone laughs and we move on. Right. So pricing homes is not an exact science. So we want to stay curious again. Oh, tell me more about that. We want to stay away from arrogance. We want to be likable. We want to be calm, right? Keep your emotions out of it. This is not a time for emotions. We want to stay logical. So we want to neutralize their emotions, and then being proactive. So know your walk away price. It doesn't do you any good, especially now with the market starting to shift, is that to take listings that are overpriced, because there's a cost associated with that, right? One, if they're overpriced to begin with, they're probably going to beat you up on commission, and then they're going to continue to be difficult throughout the entire transaction. So know your walkaway price, or build a price reduction automatically into the listing agreement. Okay, we can try that, Roberta. We'll try your price for 30 days, but then in 30 days, we're dropping it to this. And you put it right into the listing agreement. That way, no one gets amnesia and forgets our conversation in 30 days, right? You build that right into the listing agreement. You can also suggest to do an appraisal. Have a third party come out. If you like each other and we can't come together on price, offer to do an appraisal. They pay for it up front, and then you reimburse them at closing for when the property sells, right? So that way, if they don't list with you, or it ends up failing to sell, you're not out the money. But when we neutralize that and we get a third party to come out and say, okay, here's what the appraiser says it's worth, right? And then that's also a marketing technique that you can do, is we can say price at $1 less than the appraisal value, and you could say price below appraisal value, right? They don't need to know that it's $1, right? We're not lying. It is priced below. And so you can also use that appraisal for, marketing in the future. So those are two ways to overcome that objection, that, instead of just walking away. But there will be times that you meet someone and you just, you know what? I don't like your energy. I'm not taking this listing because you're going to suck the life out of me and make me hate my job. And so know that walkaway price, right? The only $1 million client I ever worked with, I ended up firing because they were so toxic and such ugly people. and it was very, very rewarding when I fired them, right? It felt so good and empowering because they felt like they had me over a barrel because they were this, this $1 million buyer. And I was like, no, see ya, you're crazy. So the reminder at the bottom, justification is leverage. So the pricing game is all about justification. Thus, you should be willing to list a home at the right price that's congruent with the seller's needs. So taking overpriced listings behaviorally communicates a dangerous message. So which basically says that the seller's in control, right? And that the seller's needs are being used to leverage the market, and that doesn't work. You guys have heard me tell the story about my friend Debbie. We were selling her house and she needed to pay her grandmother back $100,000, and we just were not getting the price for the house. And I said to her, I was like, I love your grandma. She's a sweetheart, but the market doesn't care about grandma. Right now, the market doesn't care. And so we ended up having to reduce the price. So that, those are real stories, right? That people will do that. They'll justify their needs, but that's not what the market will bear. Okay. So beliefs form the parameter for win-win relationships. So here's the beliefs that we need to possess as pricing specialists. So pricing a home is not an exact science. You do have comps, right? We want to be an expert of pricing based on the market conditions, based on the subdivision, based on the home, right? I told you guys about that house that the guy went to Open Door, OfferPad, whichever, and this house is vintage, like it's original from 1967. And so I said to him, I was like, an algorithm cannot price your aunt's house. I know that it needs a roof and I know that it needs an AC. OfferPad doesn't know that, right? And so that's 20 grand right there. That's going to come off the top. And so pricing a home is not an exact science, but we need to do a good job of knowing what's going on in the market so we can convey that and manage sellers' expectations. And by the way, iBuyer sales, I just saw an article yesterday, iBuyer sales were down in Q1. So sellers have opted to go traditional and versus going with iBuyers. So I think that's a little bit telling of what's happening in the market. So informed people make intelligent decisions. Homes sell for two reasons: price and exposure, right? Price and exposure. If we price it right and we expose it, where do we expose it? The MLS. Right? The MLS is your best friend when it comes to marketing. Now you need to use the MLS as a tool that it is, right? Making sure that your everything's filled out, your directions are good, your write-up's good, your schools are good, and professional photography, right? It's cheap enough. We shouldn't be skimping on that. Sellers determine the price based on what their needs are lightly. So we want to make sure if they need a certain dollar amount because they're going to buy something else, then we need to talk about that. And maybe that's not the right time for them to sell their home, right? Buyers determine the value. So this is based on what have buyers done in the past. Price should never exceed the value, because now we're starting to justify the seller's need. And that's when we will fail. So sellers' needs can't be used. Buyers seldom pay more than fair market value. I don't know that that's necessarily true that we've experienced the last 2 years or almost 3 years, but I think that is going to start to change. Competition determines the price entry point. So competition is what else is for sale in the area. The pricing game is all about justification. We have to justify it not only to the consumer, but also to the appraiser. An effective pricing strategy supports a win-win working relationship. There's a difference between taking listings and selling listings, right? So it doesn't do us any good just to have a bunch of listings, Monica, sitting on the shelf. There's an opportunity cost associated with taking overpriced listings. You think about it, your time is worth money. You pay for photography, you pay for a transaction coordinator, you got sweat in the game. And now if the house doesn't ever sell, you've just written a check and wasted money, right? Plus emotionally, it drains you and it's draining to them as well. People have lived before you. So this talks about expired and canceled inventory. And so I think we need to be paying attention to canceled and expired inventory now, right? As things start to shift a little bit. Pricing homes is neighborhood or area specific. And then tangible tools trump all opinions. And our tools are our comps, right? What's happening in the neighborhood, what's happening in the markets. People will trust and follow what you can logically and tangibly explain. And then it's unacceptable to leave the seller's money on the table. I love that one because when we have this, if we possess that type of attitude, we won't be conveyed as having commission breath and just wanting to sell the house at the price that we can, as fast as we can to get paid, right? And so, we are oftentimes associated to other types of salespeople that don't have great reputations. And so if we have this attitude that it's unacceptable to leave the seller's money on the table, I feel like that changes that vibe, right? Changes the interaction that we have with that seller because now they feel like, Jan, that you care about their bottom line, right? And it's not about commission breath. And then what's put in motion stays in motion. So if we overprice something, we will chase the market down, right? In the bank-owned days, we were actually pricing houses 30 days lower than what they were worth that day because the market was crashing that fast. And talk about a counterintuitive, right? Pricing properties below what they were worth at the time. So, but what stays in motion what's put in motion stays in motion. So if we overprice something, it sits and then we start chasing the market down. And then we also put, there's buyers out there that say, well, what's wrong with it? Is the seller crazy? Does it need a new roof? Is there something wrong with it? Why isn't it selling? And now that all of a sudden changes the dynamic, changes the position of the seller in that situation, right? Because now we put the buyer in the driving seat, not the seller, right? Okay. So
Sarah,
yes.
can I ask you a question?
Yes,
You
ma'am.
know, the way we're in this transition to a different kind of market. And so what I'm wondering is, how do you do comps? Knowing like any comps we look at are these overinflated prices that we've had. So how do you make that adjustment, in the comp, in trying to show somebody data, to prove what price you think it should be at?
Prices are what they are right now. I mean, I think the comps are still there. The data is still there. I think that we're not going to have the answer to that, Sandra, for probably several months because, it's going to take a minute, right? I mean, if rates stay at 6.25, that's going to also bump out some more buyers that were, already questioning at 5.5, right? So I think in the months that come, if the houses sit longer, that's when we're going to see seller price reductions. I set myself up in a search, so I see everything that comes on the market for our company. And just this morning, there were 3 properties that had price reductions.
Yeah, I saw a few on one I was looking up as well. It's interesting.
Yeah, so we have like 52 active listings in our company, and that was just today, three active price reductions. So I think you have to use the data you have today, but I think we also have to manage sellers' expectations to say, this is what the price is today. This is not maybe what your house might sell for, right? We just have to monitor the market and see. And so NAR says that for every 10 showings, you should have an offer. So if you're not getting any showings, you're overpriced. If you're getting showings and no offers, you're overpriced, but not by much, right? That means that the consumer is going somewhere and finding a better product for a better price, right? And so I think it's just managing sellers' expectations. And so data is what it is today, but as we progress in this new climate, that's when it's going to start being telling. I know that's not a direct answer, but it's the answer I have for you.
Yeah, no, that's good.
And I think Sandra, watching the expired and canceled is also going to be critical.
All right.
Because there's that company that puts houses on the market for 72 hours and they cancel. And so that's going to be very telling that, what are those, if those products aren't selling. Okay. So I think that's critical, watching the canceled and expired inventory.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I think it's just going to be, we're just going to have to see how this rolls out, right? I mean, rates went from 5.5 to 6.25. That was a pretty significant jump overnight. So bad day for the market. And I asked my lender, the reason being is because the inflation report was much higher than what they had anticipated. And I think it's 8.6 nationally, which is pretty significant. So Yeah.
I just read an article this morning that said they're gonna increase rates again tomorrow morning.
Are they?
That's what it
Yikes.
said.
Yeah, let's hope not, James. Let's hope not, because that's pretty brutal. But here's the thing, you
Supposed to
guys.
be by half a point.
Go what? Say, Roberta, what?
But it's supposed to be by half a point.
So that put us at what, 6.5?
Yeah.
Okay. It's still cheap money, but still, I think all of you guys should be talking to your lenders about what does it look like to buy down points. When I started selling real estate 25 years ago, the purchase contract actually had a box in the financing section where you'd be asking the seller to buy points, and you would put how many points were in there. So I think that's a conversation we need to be having with people, and understanding what that looks like for the buyer. Does the buyer have the cash to do it, or is that a concession we're going to start seeing sellers offer? So, because think about that. If you got a house that's sitting on the market 60 days, and the seller really wants their price, you could offer that concession, and maybe you attract the buyer that would be willing to pay that price, but because they can buy the rate down 2 points, now they can afford the payment. So something we need to, that's old school real estate right there. So talk to your lenders and find out what that looks like. Okay. So I turned to share off because basically all the rest of the materials are all just scripts. And so on page 8, so based on the information available, what do you think we should enter the market at price? And so this is after you've gone through the comps, right, and shared all of that stuff with them. And so I love the way this is phrased. Where should we enter the market? Right? Where's our appropriate price entry point? It's different, right? It's different than what your competition is saying. And it also engages the seller in a conversation, right? It's not you, Jan, saying this is what I think we should price the house at, right? Yeah, you're going to say that, but you can say it different. Based on the data we've gone over, Jan, what do you think should be the most appropriate price entry point? And typically what I do is I have, let's say I have a property that's between 325 and 350. I'm going to have a price sheet at 350, one at like 315, and one at 320, or I'm sorry, 320, 350, 335, 325. I'm going to run a cost sheet based on that. And then after I go through everything and show them the comps, I'm really wanting them to price it at 335. But if I do a good job showing them and letting them walk through all of that, they will say that to me. And then I can say, great, that's exactly what I was thinking, Sandra. I went ahead and prepared a cost sheet for you. Now, I'm going to build in costs, right? Things like, maybe concessions for points, right? A home warranty. I'm going to build things into that cost sheet so that it's not a surprise to them when we get an offer. I've already talked about it. Okay. I think we might see closing costs come back as an issue too, you guys, as something, coming up. So just something to think about, because closing costs could be used for what? To buy down points. All right. So just think about that. Page 9. So pricing homes is a neighborhood specific. So if the seller is unrealistic or wants to use a benchmark price, so I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to read through all of these. The seller believes the home is worth more because of a specific amenity. I had a listing a few years ago that had solar, and this was before solar became acceptable. And I literally sold the house for $50,000 more the first day on the market than what we sold it for 60 days later, because solar at the time was not, people didn't want it, right? And they didn't understand it, and they had to finance it, had to be approved for the finance of the solar. And so, but my seller thought that the solar was the best thing since sliced bread. And I had to explain to him that solar is it's an amenity that is people choose because it's a lifestyle, right? And it's like having a pool, right? Not everybody wants that. So we have to be able to manage that expectation. Seller wants to list above the competition, right? So the script is basically if you need to be out of here in 60 days, done, sold and closed and moved, then this is not acceptable. This option is not acceptable. And always ending the scripts with a question. So the one here is, wouldn't you agree? Right? When we say that, wouldn't you agree? That's getting them to take accountability and take, and engage them more in the process with that. Page 10. So this is the seller wants to disregard the competition. And so the question here is, why would a buyer want to pay more for your home? And then you just shut up and let them answer the question, right? That's going to be hard. It's going to make you sweat, right? But we have to allow them to take responsibility for that, because pricing, if a home is overpriced, it's typically because an agent's not strong at educating the seller and managing those expectations. Okay. So why would a buyer want to pay more for your house? And then just be quiet and let them answer. Okay. Most of the time they're going to wiggle in their seat because they don't have an answer. right? Because that's not logical. The previous agent told me it was the wrong time of year. Do we have a wrong time of year in Arizona to sell properties? Jen says no. Are there times that there are peaks and valleys? Yeah, May tends to be a funky month because it's graduation, school's getting out. July can be a little funky as well because it's hot and everyone's on vacation. So there are times, and you can study that in MLS, but for the most part in Phoenix, we don't shovel sunshine. And so we don't have weather conditions that would inhibit people from wanting to move. But even those markets, I coach people where they have weather and their markets are still really robust as well. So I think, again, knowing when those peaks and valleys are. Seller wants to start higher and then come down. Okay, so again, using the example, if they have to move in 60 days, based on what you've shared with me earlier, wouldn't that be in a direct violation of your needs? And there are some people, and again, I don't know that I'm going to walk away from a listing because the seller wants to overprice it. I think I'm going to do one of the two things I suggested to you, either build in a price reduction in my listing agreement or suggest an appraisal. Okay. Because I think that I want the listing, right? I'm not, unless there's some other issue, like they're crazy or they're going to suck the life out of me. I'm going to take the listing. Okay. So for stubborn sellers. So again, you got to remember that you live in a world of abundance. That's one of our scripts or one of our core beliefs that we have in Momentum. So you guys can read through page 11 on that. And please do read through there. And I'm running short on time because I talk too much. So I want to make sure I cover all of these. Let's see. It's always good too. I don't know if you guys like to doodle, but on page 12, it's an example of a big house versus a small house. And so it's kind of fun to actually take a piece of paper and draw that, right? So they can see the visual of it. So, and some people are visual like that, and it will get their thinking a little bit different, right? And so that's a great script in there. So page 13, so you reap what you sow. So we want to list at 275 for a few weeks and then come down to 250. So first 30 days of the market is the most critical. We agree with that, right? You see, it's been my experience. If we start your home at 275, here's what likely will happen. And then you can draw the small house, big house, okay? And you do get the most of your activity in the first 30 days. And so if you're overpriced, and again, 30 days is not a long time, but it is coming out of this market that we've been in. Okay. And so I think we have to manage buyers' expectations in that too, or buyers' thoughts around that. Because if a house is sitting for 30 days, that might be our new normal. It doesn't mean that the house is overpriced or has a condition. That might just be the new normal. It might take 30 days to find a buyer who can qualify it at 6.5% interest for the price that the house is. Okay. And so supply and demand, you guys, when demand is hot, supply is low, right? It's just shifting a little bit. Okay. Still, we got to still be positive though. Page 14. Be aware of sellers who refuse to acknowledge simple logic. Okay. So we still think our home is better and have an unexplained need to price it $25,000 over market value. And so here's the script that I think is important to share. Well, we could list the home for $25,000 over market value, but in doing so, let me define for you who would become our new target: a cash buyer or a buyer who needs to pay $25,000 over market value. How many of those buyers do you think exist? And then just be quiet and let them answer. There is a lot of cash floating around out there. There is, right? 4 out of 10 homes are owned free and clear in the United States. So there is a lot of cash, but cash buyers are savvy. Right? They're savvy. They're not necessarily just going to overpay because they can, right? I mean, there might be some, right? But I think, again, things are starting to shift. How many cash buyers? I think cash buyers are going to be the ones that are want to lowball your people, frankly, right? Because they can, right? Because they think cash is king. Page 15. So other pricing challenges. You don't need an unmotivated seller in your life. So we've done all these updates over the past few years. So I can appreciate that, but in the buyer's eyes, that may mean you've simply brought the home up to selling standards. When I sold my house in Prescott a couple years ago, I needed a new roof. And I was telling Nate about it. I said, well, I'm going to raise the price. If I put a new roof on, I'm going to raise the price. And he said to me, Sarah, you know better than that. I'm like, what do you mean? Because I'm being a typical seller, right? And he goes, you're just bringing your house up to standards to where it needs to be to sell. He's like, you can't raise the price just because that's maintenance. And so I had to agree. So okay, thanks for the reality check there, Nate, and smacking me around a little bit, right? So because it's true, right? I started getting into that space of, well, I'm going to spend 10 grand, put a new roof on. I want 10 grand more. No, that's not the case, right? And so, you know, these houses that are being renovated and put on the market, we're just bringing them up to standards, right? To where they should be in maintenance. So buyers don't care about your needs. We have to get $25,000 to buy another home. So let's pretend that you are a buyer. You've already seen 5 homes and I show you this one. You like it, but you're curious why it's priced so far above the market. I reply that the seller has to have $25,000 to buy a new home. What would you do if you were that buyer? And again, we got to just let them answer, right? Because they're going to say, I wouldn't. That's silly. I'm not going to do that, right? And so we got to allow them to take accountability in that. Joe said that he would list my home above market. And so Nate would say, of course he did, right? Of course he did. And so how did Joe justify the price? Did he share his numbers with you? Do you have a copy? Do you think that what buyers have done in the past buying situations is important? Do you think Joe was only telling you what he thought you wanted to hear? Right. And so then we be quiet and let them answer. And there's more to that script on page 17. Page 18, so you must know your walkout price. Joe said he would list my home above market. Are you saying that you will not list your home with me unless I list it in the realm of ridiculous? I probably wouldn't say that, guys. Being honest, that's a little harsh. Jan's like, no, that's a little harsh. So I probably wouldn't say that. I'd say something a little bit softer, but I suppose if it was a strong D, I might say that. But that's pretty hardcore script there. So other pricing challenges. So what's put in motion stays in motion. So shouldn't we leave room for negotiation? And I'm going to pause here because I think this is an important question. Culturally, we are going to encounter people, not only culturally, but regionally. I remember working with a lady from Texas who everything was a negotiation, everything, right? To the point where we were in escrow and she wanted, there was some repair that needed to be done and the seller was unwilling to do it. So she was going to cancel the deal, fly back out here from Texas, stay another week in a hotel and spend money to find another house, which I said to her, you're going to spend just the same amount of money to do that than you would to just do the repair. Does that make sense to do that? And when I was able to point that out to her, shifted her thinking and she said, you're right. And we went on, but she was from Texas and I am not kidding you guys. Everything was a negotiation with this woman and it was exhausting, but I share that because it's a great story. So regionally and also, culturally, there's some cultures that's what they want to do, and you're not going to take that away from them. So you just need to deal with it and help them understand like what's the importance of this negotiation here. Okay. So shouldn't we leave room for negotiation? So again, I'm not going to read that script to you, but there's a great couple questions in there on how to overcome that. And then before leaving price, we have to eliminate the potential for remorse. It kills me when I hear someone say, well, I think I sold my house for too little, right? That bugs me. I don't like that. So how will you feel if your home sells tomorrow? And in this market, sellers are probably going to say, I'm going to be disappointed if my house doesn't sell tomorrow, right? So we have to manage those expectations. How are you going to feel if just your house doesn't sell tomorrow, right? If it doesn't, but here's the script though, is I would feel like we priced it too low. So why would you feel that way? Is it your goal to meet your needs in your designated time frame? Would you agree that pricing your home at the appropriate price entry point increases the odds of getting one or more offer within your designated time frame? Would you feel your needs were any less satisfied if the offer came in on the first day as opposed to the 60th day? And so that's a real good way to overcome that, because if we've priced it right and we've done the right job, we should expect that the right buyer will see it. And then we've done a good job with that. So I think that's a great script for eliminating that remorse. And I also think that we need to be managing those expectations that it might not be tomorrow. I was talking to somebody, I don't know, it was a week or two ago, and she's like, I took a listing and it hasn't had no showings in 24 hours. I'm like, slow your roll. It's okay. It's okay. All right. So will you work for less? Cost is only an issue in the absence of value. And so we have to do a good job of all the way through, right? And never talk commission on the phone, you guys, never. If you talk commission on the phone, you're done, right? So don't do that. I like to say, that's a great question, Jan, but before I can't give you a commission until I see your house. And I like to tailor my commission packages around your needs. Right. And so that makes you feel warm and fuzzy. You're like, ooh, it's tailored just for me. Right. So will you work for less? Nate's script is some agents will. and he just moves on, right? Doesn't make a big deal out of it, just moves on. And so we want to do a good job, because if you do a good job throughout the whole process, cost shouldn't even be a question, right? We should, when we get to commission, it shouldn't even be an issue. So do you not think I am worth what I am asking? And then, again, be quiet and wait for the response. You guys, it's another part of this market shifting. And I think I said it when we started the class, is we get to actually defend our commission right now. Right. And I think that's awesome. That's an awesome thing. And so don't get into the space of lowering your commission just to get the listing, because know your value, right? Know your value that you bring to the table. We all bring value to the table. And, if you get sued, you're writing a check for $5,000 for your E&O deductible. So think about that. If you reduce your commission and you get in trouble, something happens, is it really worth reducing the commission? Okay. So let's see, number 22, page 22. If you don't have a plan, you will be a part of someone else's plan. So will you work for less? So do you not see a difference in my approach? Do you see more value in my approach? And so there's a great script on that. I'm running short on time here. Okay, so 23. So commission objection. So Joe said he would list my home for less. So meaning commission. So do you see how easily Joe sacrificed his money? Just think how frugal he's going to be with yours. Because if Joe can't negotiate his own commission, how's he going to negotiate the sales price of your house? Right? So that's a great script. 24. So commission objections. So Joe said he would list my home for less. And then I guess Joe knows what his worth is. Bottom line, after our conversation tonight, do you think you and your investment are in better hands with me or Joe? And if someone's really hung up on commission, then do we really want to take that listing? Probably not. Commission concerns. So why should I pay you more than what Joe, when Joe will work for less? Peace of mind. I think that's an easy one to say, peace of mind, because Dan, you're in good hands with me. So what do you mean? And then you can be certain that my number one goal is to satisfy your specific needs. If I feel there is a need here I can't satisfy, I will not take your listing. Could Joe say the same thing? 26. So again, never talk commission on the phone. I already said that, so we don't want to get into that space. So the term of the listing. We typically take a 6-month listing. I think on your luxury stuff, you might start thinking about taking a 1-year listing, right? And so you can't get, if comps tell you that it's going to take you 90 days to sell the house, don't take a 90-day listing agreement. You take a 6-month listing agreement, right? Because you can't do your job, and it doesn't do any good to take a listing for a shorter period of time than what data is telling you it's going to take to sell the house, right? You're wasting money and time. So we don't want to do that. Office location. So where's your office located at? I think this has become less and less of an objection. And here's the thing, you guys, we have 3 beautiful offices, and that the fact that you're Remax agents, if you need to go to Scottsdale or Chandler and there's a Remax office down there, phone ahead. Hey, this is Monica with Remax Professionals. Can I use your conference room? And they'll most likely say yes, because you're a Remax agent, right? And so that really shouldn't be an objection. I mean, it can be, right? So people that, if you're like me being up here, right, versus being in Phoenix. So it can be. So there's a script in here for that too. Friendship objection. So I have a friend in the business. We all have a friend in the business. There's 92,000 agents running around. Everybody knows someone who's in real estate. So the script is why am I here then? If you have a friend, why am I here? And you're there because they have doubt that their friend can get the job done, right? Or maybe they don't want to mix friends with, business, okay? And speaking of that with family, there are times in your career where you are not going to want to work with a family member, and that's okay, right? Because the relationship should come first. And so refer them to somebody who will take good care of them, okay? Because there are people that just, there are times that's going to be an important choice for you to make, that it's just not a good fit, okay? So experience objection. How many homes have you sold? So don't lie, right? You can lean in, Jan, you're new. You can lean in on the Remax stats, right? How many houses have we sold as a company, right? So you could lean in on that. You could lean in on, if you're Roberta, the team, you can lean in on that type of stuff. Okay. And so don't lie. Let's see. Lastly, on page 31 is never say no. Never say no until you know what you're saying no to. And these are kind of a little bit more like stacked scripts. So if at the end of our conversation, you feel like it's not a good time to sell, you can follow up. If you don't see, like, if you think I am worth what I charge, my office is too far away. Will you pay for, can I refer you to somebody, right? If you feel like I'm too far away. Let's see, realtors are crooks. That's my favorite. What if they want to go for sell by owner? Well, can I bring you a buyer? Will you pay me a commission if I bring you a buyer? And then if you feel I'm too inexperienced, can I refer you to somebody else, right? And the same thing, if you feel like I can't get the job done, can I refer you to somebody else? So please take the time to read through all of those really, really powerful stuff in those scripts, and just, practicing them and reading through them. At the very least, when something comes up, hopefully you have a dialogue that you can use to overcome any objections that you guys encounter. So questions, comments, any thoughts, any ahas before we wrap up for today? Nope.
Just very, very useful.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. Okay. So what do we got Thursday? Oh, bam. Duh. Hello, bam. Hello. We have that. And then I don't think, do we have any tech classes this week? I don't think we do, but yeah, always try to pay attention when Alex is doing tech classes, because those are always good stuff too. So, all right. Well, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, anything that you need, please reach out. Otherwise, I will see some of you on Thursday and then the rest of you next Tuesday. So have a great day.
Thank you,
We'll see you
Sarah.
guys later. You're welcome.
Thanks, Sarah.
Bye.